Hello, stellar people, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Trey, and today is a final ink reveal and a post-mortem of Lore of the Silverhand project. This is the sixth day of, well, not sixth day of doing this, but sixth week of doing this. And it was a challenge for myself to try to get to a higher level, to level up, as one would say. So my character is Lore of the Silverhand, and this is an image of the character and some other shots. I'm trying to get a feel of the character, and the premise is it's an adventure story. It's a wandering swordsman type of a story. And right here is more what I'm shooting for. Inking, I'd like to do stories of this character in black and white. Inked stories, pretty much just ink. And these are the touchstones of Lore of the Silverhand. Conan being the biggest one. He's an iconic figure in the wandering swordsman trope, action stories, because he's very versatile. Goes to place, has adventures, defeats monsters or humans or wizards. The possibilities for Conan and what he can get into are endless, and that is the exact thing I want for Lore. But also we have the Witcher, Geralt of Rivia, and I love these stories of just a lone wandering swordsman warrior. Not quite a hero, but you can have diverse, interesting stories. And so for Geralt, being a witcher, he goes around slaying monsters. But also on the road, he encounters human beings that aren't monsters, but are monstrous in behavior. And sometimes he has to take them out. So he's assaulted on two sides. He's trying to do a job, but also you can encounter human beings that aren't so nice. And then the third being Vampire Hunter D, Yoshitaka Amano, a great inking artist. And this is, I like this, his loose, but all there style of inking. And I love this. This is fantastic. But all these guys, all these characters, wandering swordsmen, not quite heroes, but they have a purpose. The level I would like to get to. This is Pepe Larraz, a great Spanish artist working in comics. I first encountered his work on X-Men, where he did a phenomenal job. But he also has done a Conan. This is Conan versus, I don't know who these guys are, but this is classic. This is Conan versus whoever's in his way. And this is, the ink is beautiful. It's dynamic. This is what I'm going for. This is what I like. This is where I want to get to. Another is Mark Schultz, who, again, Conan. And again, just the dynamic Conan versus whoever is in his way. And I think this is what witch, monsters, zombie creature thingies, all the things, an adventure story could have done in this incredibly dynamic, incredibly beautiful black and white style. And this, again, is where I'd like to get to. It's going to take a lot of work, and I understand that, it's not going to happen overnight. Finally is Frank Frazetta, and I think this is from Strange Fantasy. I don't know who or what this character is about, but Frank Frazetta is a legend, and his inking, like Death Dealer, and he also did some Conans, just phenomenal. He's a legend. But again, the dynamism, the action, the black and white, how he puts it down, his figures, composition, all of it. This is where I'd like to get to. And I got a lot of work to put in, but these are the aspirational levels I'd like to get to. All right, let's recap the process real quick. So this is the concept. This is the built upon concept, thumbnails. This is a more refined concept. This is the full one, right? This is the concept with everything, even the background. Then we take that to pencil, nice and tight. And then I start inking, start with the characters. And then finally, we have the whole thing inked. I like to keep a clean ink just because I'd like to, sometimes fiddle with it in digital, or if I want to watercolor the whole thing later. But this has everything. This is the full inked, clean inked piece. So then, now I like to do ink washes. And then I add my darks. And that's usually how I do it. So with this, I start with ink washes and then just build upon those, and build upon those. Till in the end, I add the darks, right? The wet and wet, dark inks, save for last. So I have this watered down ink and just a normal, it's a kind of a beat up brush. And that's why I use it for this, which is just getting these ink washes. And I'll be hopping all around. But usually I start with either, this is the extreme foreground. This is going to be the darkest part of the whole piece. So I wanted to get this down first. And then the other, extreme foreground for this tree. And then after that, this figure is going to be the next thing. So he's foreground. So extreme foreground, this character is foreground. Most of the characters on the middle plane. Some are behind our lead character. And then we have the far background, everything else. So it's a fairly long process, but this is how I choose to do things. Lots of ink washes and just to build up. And I think it's because I'm mostly I feel more comfortable with painting, mostly in watercolor. And this feels natural to me. Sometimes you have to go with what feels natural for you. Before you add on different, new techniques, sometimes trying to see if your techniques fit with what you're going for. And then how you can add new techniques on top of what you already know. Sometimes you just want to go straight, fresh, something new, something totally different. But every artist is different. You have to figure out what you're going for, what your goal is, what you're, trying to achieve. And then after that, figure out how to get there. So this ink washes feels like painting to me. And I think that's why it feels much more natural. Now, once I'm at inking number 200, once I've done 200 of these things, then I'll probably be as comfortable enough that I can, I'll know, the ins and outs of how I do it, how I work, how the ink works, what I can get away with, the ins and outs of it. But until that point, this is what feels the most natural for me. And again, light ink washes are the start. I pretty much block in everything as I ink. So after inking all of the characters, which is always first, I usually always go for the characters first, then I start inking the background. Well, all I want for the background is just this road, this path that they're walking on, to be separated. And also to frame all the characters. So I'm doing the background and some ink washes. It's not neat, it's not tidy. This is how I choose to do. Then after the road is pretty much inked, I'm doing more for the foreground because foregrounds have more detail than backgrounds. But now that that's done, then I go back to the characters. So again, this foreground tree is going to be the darkest thing in this whole image. So now I can have some slightly watered down black ink, and I'm just going for more coverage right now. I have the wet, and it's bleeding into the lighter ink that I just put down. But this is extreme foreground, the darkest part of this whole thing. Once that's done, I go for the second thing in the foreground, and that's this character who is not having a good day, let's just say. So he's the closest thing to us, the viewer. So we have tree, extreme foreground, this figure, and then everybody else is on the middle. And then we go back from there. All right, the character lore is where I tend to put the most focus of all of this. If I was to chart the time is like 60, 70, maybe even 80% my lead character, and then everybody else, and then the background. So yeah, most of my focus, my energy goes towards my lead character, since I want everything to revolve around him. The most detail, the most work, the most washes, all of that for my lead. So once I lay down again my wet into wet or watered down ink was the foundation, and then I put in some darker ink. And so it'll wash it down just a little bit, but it's concrete enough that it gives that fully inked look. Or I enjoy it this way. And so again, the darkest parts, like the belt and then the pants. But I like to have my heroes stand out from everything else. So again, yes, wet into wet for the pants, and then add in the darker. And this back leg is going to be darker than the leg in motion that is kicking the guy on the ground. So I'm trying to account for that. And I know that the water, that this ink water will dry. So I try to keep it moving fairly quick, and that the dry parts will be darker than the wet parts. And I'm not too careful. I'm a little careful, but not too much. I try to keep my flow. I try not to worry too much now about mistakes, because that's sometimes when you're inking, the mistakes or the happy accidents, as I like to call them sometimes, it's just part of the process. Especially when you don't know exactly what you're doing. As I am not the greatest inker, but I'd like to get better, and that's part of why I'm doing this. So I have allowances on what I think is good or bad. It's all about numbers. You have to get the reps in. You have to get, your shots up. However, metaphor you'd like to go for. You got to do it, and you got to do it a lot before you're actually, it's like an internal thing for you. And I'm not there yet, but that's, again, we'll see at number 200. And then back to a more loose, more free, more general with bandit characters or all the characters around my hero. Now this is day 3 of my inking, and I return back to ink washes. But first is this extreme foreground, where I will again be doing more dark inks. Right, this is the most concentrated of my inks. And I get that very edge, and I want it to transition to a slightly lighter side of the tree. And once I'm done with that, I return to the ink washes, and I'll give this not extreme foreground, but foreground character another coat. And I guess maybe this is patterns, routines, or situations where you fall into, or you're doing a set path, a set pattern, almost like a workout routine where you have your set list, and this is the set, you go through the same thing. And sometimes that can be good, sometimes not so much. I think that for me, I need to first, the reason I'm doing this is to become more comfortable. Once you have familiarity, comfortableness, and ease of use with the things that you're doing, you can then start riffing. But in the beginning, I'm pretty tight, kind of shaky, kind of nervous. I don't want to mess up. But over time, it'll get easier and easier and easier. I'm not there yet, but that's where we got to get to. So again, that putting some more detailing into my lead. Trying to make him the most contrasted person in this, so that he stands out and becomes the focus. Everything revolves around him pretty much. But one thing I'd like to say about art is that it is a process. It's why I'm doing these process videos, because I always wanted to know what is the process? Right? Nobody was showing back in the day. It's gotten better now that there's the internet, but nobody showed back in the day, the steps to get to a final. How do you get to something that is well put together, well thought of? It just doesn't come forth as, hey, this is this is the painting, this is the animation, this is the thing. It didn't just come out fully formed. There are steps to get there, and that's why I like doing this as a way of, this is what I would like to have learned when I was younger. That it's all a process. It is all a process. And you can accomplish a lot with just some time and some effort. In the beginning, it's going to be really slow. You're going to freak out because you don't know what you're doing. But again, with some time, some effort, be patient with yourself. We're trying to get good. It's not going to happen overnight. Heck, it might not even happen at all, but we'll give it a go. So finally, we are at the detailing phase. And at the detailing phase, I break out my Microns and my Copic pens, and I go back in, giving some more details. Just mostly this is just, I kind of let myself go, feel free. I have the major parts. It's all there. The image is pretty much done. You know what's happening. You know the action going, but I just like to tighten it up. And of course, the detailing phase for me is the longest phase, right? The blocking in, the getting things all nice and, ready is pretty short, right? You can get an image down pretty quickly, but the details, the details can take a while. So sometimes it feels, I just go for it. The hard work is done. Now it's just go for it. Just have fun. I don't think you can totally mess up, but the detailing helps. Just give that little bit of life to it. Some vibrancy. That bit of extra oomph or extra spark. Now you can mess it up, and I have done this in the past, but more or less, it's just plussing. Adding some motion, some motion streaks. But all in all, this was a really good project. And I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I have a lot to learn. And I can noodle all day. right? I will never get to a point where I won't see something that I can work on, I can fix, I can touch up, I can plus, I can improve, all of that. But sometimes you have a deadline. Sometimes you got to put your pen and pencil down because the test is over and you got to move on. Uh, and it's hard for an artist because when does something end, right? When does the creative process end? And every artist is different, right? Some like it loose, rough, and just go. Once they're done, and they know it. And others, you'll keep things on the board if you're painting for a while, and you'll look at it over the course of a week or a month and just notice things that can be improved, can be done a little bit better, can be touched up to make the image better. So when is a project done? Every artist is different, and you have to decide for yourself. So let's take this to the final. Take a look at the end. This is the final piece. After about a week's work, doing, various washes, and then adding some darks and doing some pen touch-ups and all of that. This is how it looks in the end. I have my foreground tree to the far extreme left, my foreground character falling, and then the middle ground, which includes my character and two figures behind him, and then the extreme background with some characters. Well, the extreme background has just background going up off into space, but this is it. This is how it turned out. And I like it for what it is right now. But then I also took it into computer after I scanned it, and into Photoshop. I love Photoshop after you have an image because then you can tweak it and touch it up. But this is, I added just a total gray on the whole thing, and then for the far background, I lasso tooled and then erased out the far background. That would be the sky. So just to give some slight differentiation of light and dark for the background in totality. And I think I will at some point watercolor this thing because I've kind of taken a shine to it. And in watercolor, I think it could look cool. But yeah, this is the final image. So now let's do a post-mortem. But first, let's look at what we were going for. So Pepe Larraz, this is his inking of Conan. And as you can see, this is the stuff that Mark Schultz, this is the stuff I wanted to get to. This is the level I want to get to. There's some, unfairness. This is Frank Frazetta of what I'm going for and what, where I'm at and where they're at. Where I'm at, where they're at. So for the post-mortem, I always look for negatives and positives. So the negatives. Was the goal reached? No. But it was a good try. Number two, I don't have enough experience. Don't have enough inking under my belt. And then three, I was fearful in execution. I was at the end, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, and so I pulled back. Right? Just in the background, I knew I was holding back because I don't know what I'm doing. So it's a good try, but now let's go over some of the positives. Positives. Was the goal reached? I ask again. No, but again, it was a mighty good try. It was a good try. My favorite part, I think, was the use of reference. Reference I shot, all of that was fantastic. I love that. I need to do more of that. And using that reference photo for character usage, brilliant. Loved it. And three, doing the background. I usually don't do that. And I went for it here, and I loved that. So there were pros and cons. There was good and bad. I need to do a lot more inking, and I will. I'm not going to stop. So, but this was a good try. And now we put that away and we move on to the next one. So, I hope you found this entertaining and enjoyable. I thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Take care, keep shining, and see you on the next one.